The microphone's in the same place if you've got questions. Our program states something that some, evidence of profound genius that I came up with about 6 months ago. And as you see what it says, with the psychic remote viewer ET predicted upcoming global environmental, social, and economic crises and geophysical cataclysms. Gosh, doesn't that sound wonderful? What do you suggest or encourage today? We heard a little bit from R.E. McMaster last night, and they hardly let him go. Of course, I just let him go. He ran off the stage as I was going to hand the microphone to him. There's 2 microphones here, and I'm going to ask these 4, and soon to be 5, move the microphones back and forth, if they will, please. But I'll start out, and we'll just go right down the line here and ask them to say whatever they'd like to share, whatever they'd like to argue with each other. We'd like to get a little controversy going. We haven't had much excitement yet this year, except for the kids and the running to the other hotel, and the outside of that, and the remodeling and the dust and everything else. Nothing much has happened.
And that's basically all those laws really capture: tort law, criminal law, contract law, and that is in essence breaking down globally now on a massive scale. And the Clinton White House has done a lot to diminish the essence of those 2 basic moral truths that are, again, captured by all religions. Do all you agreed to do, and then don't violate a person's person or property. So as those things happen, one of my E = MC² equations that I use in any country where I go in to consult, it doesn't matter if it's Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, and that's this: that government is always religion applied to economics. Government is always religion applied to economics. What I mean by that is government sits between religion and economics, and every government draws its ideas about right or wrong, ethics, morality, good and evil from religious philosophical concepts that are embraced by society. Those are then captured into laws and in turn frame the arena of human action that the great Austrian economist called Ludwig von Mises called economics. Human action is economics. So government is always religion applied to economics. So if you know any one of the 3, you can triangulate very quickly to the other 2. And what we're seeing in our society today, and to a certain extent globally, is a truncation, a separation, a segregation of those things that keep us from being whole as individuals. We may be technical specialists and geniuses is what we do, but in terms of generalistic wisdom, it's not widespread in the culture. This allows a tremendous amount of distortion and manipulation of things to occur. Third principle I want to mention has to do with, there's a lot of discussion at this conference, of course, about things that are parapsychological or supernatural or quantum. And from that area, I always try to go and do deductive from general to specific, and then to take things in terms of the left brain, from by way of inductive reasoning, from specific back to general, and have it going both ways in terms of integration, and then see harmonics of truth of that principle that exists out in various other levels and fields. Because if truth is true, it'll be true in many different areas. Example of that would be like the specialization of division of labor leading to trade is one of the principles that points to the importance of the individual. And the fourth principle, or the model that I use, has to do with recognizing the 2 basic ways of creating society. One is basically the assumption of the feminine, or the holistic, or the yin, and the other is the masculine, or the individual principle. And I will focus on the masculine as being the individual principle of the yang, and the feminine being the yin, or the collective principle. And what I've found that works best in terms of maximizing the one and the many, or the balance between the individuals and the collective, or the balance between the masculine and the feminine, that creates greatest peace, prosperity, individual happiness, and creativity is when each of us as individuals, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, all of us have male and female aspects to both of us, but the individual is a masculine principle. And what creates the best in society is when the individual, through covenant personally and through contract impersonally, creates voluntarily the collective, the whole, the one, the feminine, if you will. And we're getting farther and further away from that, and the growth of a big government and bureaucracy is the direct reflection of us basically, you know, letting go of our individual responsibilities as politically, as ambassadors or as priests, economically as stewards, governmentally, governmentally as priests and kings, and religiously as priests, and economically as stewards, which we have individually, and then covenant and contract in creating the whole. And so we're seeing basically a real segregation in our society with less and less of us who see the importance of the individual being accountable and responsible, and then as the three parts, each of us individually being religiously, politically, and economically viable, creating through those covenants and contracts the collective, which is what has always maximized the interests of the individual as well as the society long term. And we see that function, in fact, all over the world, regardless of what society we're looking at, in the automobile traffic system. Because if you don't watch the boundaries that are obeyed there individually, that creates the greatest and highest good for the individual and also for the collective, the system doesn't function. And it works a whole lot better in the United States than it works in Panama City, for example. But it works real well in Singapore, which ironically is a police state, but the police state there is a local government, so that's a different argument. So these are the kind of models, these four aspects of the models I find that are very, very effective in working with predictability for things of the future. And as I see these things break down, it becomes easier to see, well, yeah, we'll see the Clinton plunge protection team protecting the stock market, or the Federal Reserve a branch in New York will work with the Treasury in terms of how our currencies are supported or not supported in stock market futures or leverage and things of that nature to basically maintain a false sense of consumer confidence. Those kind of things occur. So we're in an era right now where the realities of life that have been subject to illusion and the Hollywood facade mystique for so long are starting to break down in a massive way, and they've broken down basically pretty much all over the world now, and this except for this country. And that's particularly true economically, which is very, very grounded, because it's very seen and very, very real. And we all may be one, but I promise you, if I cut your arm with a knife, you're gonna hurt, and I'm not gonna hurt. So we're many as well as one. It's that both of these things have to coexist. I mean, if we're all one, we wouldn't be different, right? And the fact that we're all different that allows us to be specialized and have this wonderful specialization and division of labor that creates the harmony and the unity of the one or the feminine. And these basic concepts, these four principles, are lost today in our society. And so they are becoming reawakened in other areas of the world that have already been burned by this brush fire of economic chaos. It's gone through Latin America now, and it's gone through Asia. And so it's kind of like the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And this group is the group that tends to be on the cutting edge anyway. And I would say probably, how many of the people that you know can you really communicate with about things that are grounded and of essence and have to do, that are meaningful long term in your life? How many people even think long term anymore in terms of the future? And so these are the things that have to do with my concerns over the next year and accelerating to 2008 to 2012, maybe 2025.
All right, is my mic on? Can you hear me? Okay, very well put. Now, Stuart, where is he wrong?
Well, first of all, I think I forgot
Careful,
the question, actually.
Talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, actually, I'll just focus in on the mind pattern, because that's how I deal with everything. And basically, as far as situations that are going to come up in the next year or two, especially the Y2K situation, my personal opinion is that a lot of that is hype. I think that there's not going to be as much problems with computer systems in general as they will have you believe. I think there are some industries that are pre-programmed for failure on purpose. But if you look at your registration in your motor vehicle and your driver's license and your credit cards, they go well past the year 2000 without any problems. And as far as the IRS is concerned, I recently heard some information from people in the IRS that that computer system is basically in order and operational. The stock market also is conducting tests between now and the middle of April to test for failure, and supposedly by April 15th or so that they will have settled that problem as well. And in fact, they were running tests this past weekend to simulate the year 2000 changes. Basically, if you have a mind pattern of loss and victimization and low self-worth, then you will suffer in any event, no matter what happens economically or politically in the year 2000. As far as geological upheaval is concerned, I don't believe the Earth is going to flip on its axis. I believe 50, 60, 70 years ago when these things were first predicted, that was a very strong possibility. But because this has been diffused through discussion and mind pattern analysis and having it disseminated through the public, the mind pattern for such a catastrophe has been changed. There may be upheavals here and there, readjusting, so to speak, but I don't think anything major will happen. There will be weather changes, political changes, economic changes. Again, it's how you think, and how the result that you will have is a result of how you think. Be a victim mentally, and you'll be a victim physically and financially as well. So my suggestion is to consider yourself of a high value, a high worth mentally, act accordingly as if nothing will happen to you, visualize a perfect future for yourself, grounded in brown, and if you live that way and accept the future as if it's happening now simultaneously, then your existence will be in order according to your own mind pattern. And so I'm not the kind of person that will promote fear and catastrophe and negativity, because if you have a mind pattern of upheaval, your personal world will flip on its axis. But if you keep yourself balanced and proper thinking, you will maintain your stability. And that's basically how I feel about that.
Okay, pass it on to Dolores before you start. Thank you.
Okay.
I would like to have either you, Nostradamus, or one of the three of you say.
One of the three of us, okay.
Yeah. My kid, my wife, well, forget it.
Okay.
I have read, and it might have been in R.E.'s letter, that the rise of the euro dollar will begin the end of the Federal Reserve System as we know it. That was very encouraging news, but I wonder if any of you have any information on that as we go along.
Okay, I think he's probably the one that knows more about the money part. Because mine, there was a prediction about the euro money in my books, but it doesn't go any further than that. Okay, I'm going to be giving a lecture next, and I'm going to be going into a lot more detail, especially on how I made the contact with Nostradamus. I'm not a channeler, I'm a hypnotherapist. And I've been lecturing all over the world about the prophecies because it's the first time we've translated all 1,000 of them. But the one thing people are always saying about the Nostradamus prophecies is they're full of doom and gloom and they don't want to read them. But in my work I found, he said, if I show you the most horrible things that mankind can do to himself, will you do something to stop it? He was showing us the worst case scenarios. And if people will look at it like that, he said the time is not set, one future set in stone. There are many probabilities and possibilities that can come off of any action, and that they go off like branches from the worst possibility to the least possibility. And we have to know which one of these paths we are going down so we can know what might be the absolute worst. And he said these branches come into what is called a nexus point. At these nexus points is an event or a personality that must happen. But after that, it branches out again into all the probabilities and possibilities that can happen. This is what we have to realize, that do we want the worst or do we want the least? It can go either way. But he also said that you don't know the power of your own mind. You can influence these predictions. That was the reason he was giving them to our time, so that we could do something about them. He said if you knew the power of your own mind, it's very scattered, and you concentrated on the opposite of what he saw, then that would be our future, peace and harmony. But if the power of one person's mind is that powerful, think of the power of group mind. I think this is part of what you were touching on too. that the power of group mind is not only multiplied, it is squared, and the power is tremendous. So everywhere I go in the world, I encourage people, if they can just take 5 minutes out of their group meetings, meditation groups, prayer groups, it doesn't make any difference. If they could take 5 minutes, all of them focus on peace and harmony, that we could short circuit the events that Nostradamus saw, and we could have that, we could create that as our future. And I think it's working, because I've been doing this now for about 10 years, and the events are not getting worse. I think they are at least softening out. But in my lecture, I'll be going into the probabilities. He talked about the Third World War, which we definitely don't want to have happen. But he did say that it wouldn't take a war to empty the coffers of the world. He said the natural disasters would be able to do that. And to watch the patterns, first that there would be earthquakes where they've always occurred, and then there would be earthquakes where they have never occurred before. And then to watch for the reawakening of the Ring of Fire. The volcanoes that have never been erupted in hundreds of years are erupting again. And also the weather patterns. He said it would, the climate, he said it would get to the point you wouldn't know your seasons. You wouldn't be able to tell your winters from your summers. And I know in Arkansas, where I live, we haven't had a winter of the last 2 years. And this is the way it's been all over the United States. The climate is definitely changing. But I do want to bring up 3 predictions that he did say about the weather we can watch. And also, I know the Earth is not going to flip on its end either. It would really be something if it did. The most that we were told it could do would just take a slight tilt, because it's sitting like this right now. And if it takes a slight tilt, that's all it would take to melt the ice caps and create all these disasters. You do know the ice caps are melting, don't you? Have you heard about that? Yeah. The water under Antarctica is now the temperature of the Mediterranean Sea. And active volcanoes have been discovered under Antarctica. And in Alaska, they said that the tundra it's melted to the point that it's like swamp. So the world is warming up. But as long as it's happening gradually, he said we could handle it. It's that sudden jerk that would create such a catastrophe, it would be impossible to handle. But I like to think of that as a probability and a possibility. But there was one prediction that deals with this area we're in right here in Florida. And hopefully it will not come true. But he said that the hurricanes would continue to become worse, and that it would only take a few degrees of warming of the oceans to create hurricanes that would be 100 times stronger and more violent than anything we have had before. And you know the water temperature is heating up. So he did see a hurricane where he said the area around Cape Canaveral, which we're very close here, aren't we, to Cape Canaveral. It's on this side of the ocean. That would be the worst in 100 years. It would be terrible. And he said if NASA would pay attention to this, they would move some of their the equipment out of here, because he said it would hit this coast with a terrible force. And the only information I have was it was supposed to happen during the 90s, and it hasn't occurred yet. And the other predictions dealt with earthquakes, and mostly on the California side, and terrible Santa Ana winds that were going to come in on that side. But that was one definitely for this area. So let's hope it doesn't happen. But you know, weather sometimes is out of the scope of scientists. But if we could learn to direct our minds, and we can change the future into something that is very, very good. It's very positive. It's what we want. But I agree with the doctor here. Doctor? I agree with him, because we do attract to us what we need or what we expect. Anything you fear, you will draw towards you. This is what you have to realize. You do create your own reality. You create your own future. If you fear something, you're going to draw it towards you. So you learn to think of the positive, and that will be our future. Okay.
Okay, Stuart, you can straighten out the other 3 of them now. Or, not Stuart, Duncan, what am I saying? I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm totally confused now. I have been passionately interested in prophecies and predictions, and I've made it a point to read Nostradamus and many others. We've published quite a few in the magazine. We've published Crystal Skull Prophecies, Prophecies of Maitar Tarabich. And I must say I have been exposed to probably more obscure prophecies and predictions of the future than the average person. And many of them are very interesting. For those who've read the back issues of Nexus, the ones of Maitar Tarabich are very interesting. He was a Serbian or a Croat. You've heard of him?
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, we published him in the magazine, and it was a church priest was given the prophecies from this chap who had these visions of the future. One of them was very interesting. He talked about a couple of hundred years into the future, which places it about now. He talked about a huge war which erupts, and rather than use birds of steel would be flying through the skies and dropping weapons of mass destruction, but he also commented very, very strongly on a type of bomb to be used in the future which would make men's minds go to sleep, which sounds like a type of mind control weapon. But,
Kind of like HARP?
well, maybe, but he indicated that this was like, bombs dropping out of planes or rays coming from aeroplanes. But the bottom line is this: one thing I've noticed in common with all the prophecies and predictions is probably, as you say, they all specify this decade of this century as being absolutely crucial. And from reading all the channeling information, which are volumes, and listening to extraterrestrial contactee information and synthesising all those prophecies, I've come to a bit of a philosophy and a picture about the future, which I'll take a minute to share with you. And that is pretty much, as you can guess, that we're in for massive change. I feel that it won't be as sudden as many of us are probably thinking that it might be, i.e. you wake up one morning and California's gone, the stock market's crashed and your kids haven't even got ready for school. I think it will be a bit more gradual, but I think we're in the middle of them. Well, I think we're just starting at the moment. My observations, that you may have the same observations, include around the planet at the moment are dramatic weather and climate changes. It's not just happening in the US, it's happening everywhere. A lot of the equatorial regions, the rainforests have dried up so severely that they're now burning down with the first lightning strike. I noticed when I come to America, I'm continually amazed at the lack of information about the rest of the world that you guys are just not exposed to.
Monica Lewinsky, we heard about.
OJ and Monica, I tell you, man. You guys should be more. This audience here, I'm sure, is different. You obviously spend a lot more time and attention in getting a bit more information, and thank God for the internet for those who access those obscure news services. But still, I came to America, to the office here about 2 or 3 years ago. As I was leaving Sydney, there was the headline news around the world were the Chinese floods, not the recent ones which wiped out several million people and much worse. It was I think 96, the floods. And it'd been raining for days and days and days. And as I got on the plane, the news was broadcasting the fact that if it kept raining for the next 24 hours, you could expect almost like a fifth of China to go underwater along with its rice crops and people, and there'd be nothing you could do. Everyone in Australia was talking about it and thinking about it. I arrived in America, I couldn't get any news on the aeroplane. The first thing I did when I got to Kempton was ask the guys, hey, what happened in China? And everyone looked at me like, China? Where's China, Nobody. I'd looked at the TV for days, nothing, absolutely nothing. I had to wait till I got back to Australia to find out what happened, and it didn't rain that night. But a couple of years later, the floods came, and they'll be coming again and again and again. So I feel it is, maybe I'm going to be out of step with the rest of these people here, but I feel we are in for absolutely enormous changes. Food supply being the first one which will really hit home. I cannot see how the world can sustain feeding the population we have, given the food storage situation at the moment and given the climatic changes. Plus, on top of it, you've got economic instability where they have mountains of butter in Europe and lakes full of milk just to keep prices stabilised. They toss fish back into the ocean dead. The amount of food which is wasted just to keep prices at a fixed rate for investors and stock funds is just, it's criminal. I did have one other thing too. I really have to say, on a personal level, my personal philosophy is maybe radical to the other end of the table, but maybe comfortable to some. I believe that each one of us here are immortal spiritual beings, and we're playing a game in the third dimension, a game that we've forgotten that we've started. One of the things I feel we've come here to experience is the experience of separation, polarity, consciousness, and to experience this life through emotions. I know a lot of people here don't want the earth changes to come, and you will find yourself reading information and listening to people who will validate this fear that you have. I say bring on the earth changes. I'm not afraid of losing it all. I feel like the moment you have released something, you don't often have to release it. It's Richard Bach's old saying that if you love something, set it free. If it's yours, it comes back. If it doesn't, it was never meant to be. There is a part of me which has got, you know, a wife and 2 kids and a nice little business empire happening around the world that would like to see stability and peace and harmony. But I just feel that we've all chosen to be here at this time to watch the game change the players and the game change the rules, and there's just no way around it. I feel that one of the functions of prophecy and prediction is to offset your role in that prophecy and prediction. Now, I feel there is so much psychic and emotional momentum behind some of these prophecies and predictions that they're unstoppable. But what you each can individually do on a personal level is change where you are when that curtain comes down. Change how you are and who you are. And I feel that we do create our own reality, as you say. I think that's one of the strongest and most important things. And I actually spend a lot of time looking at how that is workable and achievable on a scientific level. I mean, there are some fantastic books. The Individual and the Nature of Mass Events, channeled by Seth in the 70s, before channeling was even called channeling. That has got some astounding physics and discoveries which were later verified in Nature magazine. Their understanding of quantum mechanics and stuff was phenomenal. It was way ahead of its time. I encourage you to read some of that. But pay attention to the message. Just ignore the messenger on channeling. You know, if the message rings good, listen to it. So, I'll keep going, or do you want me to?
I don't know. I thought I saw R.E. chomping at the microphone here.
Well, I had a remark.
Yeah, I didn't want to categorise you as a materialist. I mean, maybe you've got...
remark on that if you please.
I mean, he's a nice guy. He talked to me as I walked into the foyer with him today. I think he's a lovely guy. I just wanted to state that there is... I just don't feel that we've evolved from monkeys up to a material world which is going to be destroyed. We don't want it to happen. To me, the whole thing of prophecy and prediction, you have to consider why you're here personally and why you're here now. Of all the time in history, why now? I believe also in many probable futures, and I feel that as you choose each decision every day of your lives, you are moving into a different probable future than you would have if you... And I believe that all probable futures exist simultaneously, and the physics is there to justify on a scientific level too. I better stop, otherwise...
Okay, and I should mention that, Duncan, you have now kind of caved into your feminine side, and you have changed your mind, and you will give a workshop. Is that right?
Well, if enough people want to work, if enough people want to do a workshop,
I will offer
it.
one.
Actually, I will tell you what I'll talk about too.
We're glad you're balanced out that way.
Well, I wasn't going to do a workshop because, I mean, I just don't have any one thing to talk about. Everyone's usually got their tag, whether it's lost cities or health, or I just don't have one particular subject that I'm known for. I mean, this today was my 3rd ever public talk, so I feel I have a lot to say about a lot of things, but not a lot to say about one. Can you understand? So for those who want to do a workshop, just put your name on the thing outside, and we'll discuss whatever you want to discuss. I do have a grand theory about history for going back a few hundred years, which may give you some technical understanding of conspiracy groups, the Illuminati, and how they work in, and how I've sort of positioned them in. And I'm sure it'll be information that you've heard, but you've never heard it in that particular pattern. So
You're now scheduled for Sunday night.
I just
Dolores?
want to make a remark before we pass it on down. I go to Europe quite a bit too, and all over the world, and I agree with you. The news is totally different when you're in a foreign country. And I come back here and I'll ask my kids, didn't you hear about thus and such on TV? No, there wasn't a word about it. And overseas, it's big news. So it's like the news is different no matter where you are. And Nostradamus called this time we're living in right now the time of troubles. He said, if you can just get through the 90s, maybe you'll be okay. It's a time of troubles, and he said, you chose to live here at this time to experience these. And there'll be more dramatic events happening during the decade of the 90s than there have ever happened before. And I said, mind you, the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. So you chose to be here anyway.
All right. All right, Ari, you got something that...
Let Stuart, he's something.
Well, actually, in
Okay,
regard
Stuart.
to what Dolores said, interestingly enough, they had deciphered some Egyptian hieroglyphics that they had found years ago. And one of the hieroglyphics actually depicted a comment from an Egyptian sociologist at the time that said he was worried about society because the youth of ancient Egypt, although it wasn't ancient to him at the time, the youth, at his age, the youth were changing the way they thought, life was going to change, and he was concerned about the end of the world even 4,000 years ago. So in every major civilization that exists, there comes a time when major change occurs because the way the mind pattern is changed. As people grow and change and learn about themselves and who they are and where they come from, the direction of that civilization's future is changed. And I do agree with Duncan that there are infinite amount of possibilities for the future, and as you make decisions, you fit into a particular slot. And as civilization or group mind makes decisions in total, then that civilization's future changes into a particular slot.
If they realize they can do it.
Yes, exactly. And that is why it's important to understand that you create your own reality. So if, again, you have a victim mentality, you will create a future of victimization. If you create a mentality of abundance and prosperity and unconditional love and support, that is what you will achieve no matter what else is going on around you physically at the time. So it's very important that you gain control of your own faculties, understand who and what you are and what your purpose is. And if we do this en masse, then there'll be a critical mass achieved and everything will move in the positive direction.
Okay, one thing I would like to throw in for you to mull over as time permits, and if you'd like to care to address it, is that do you feel that there are quite a number of people who are trying to use this Y2K and all this other stuff strictly for profit? And what can we do to watch out for that? Or can you be specific? Is there anybody that you have found that really isn't sincere in what they're doing and just after it for the buck? Just a lot of people seem to be really trying to peddle merchandise, and is it a good idea, or do you find people that maybe we should be aware of and watch out for it? Any of you can address that as you see fit.
I'll just make a brief comment on that because I've already basically expressed. Yeah, I think a lot of it is for profit. Your insurance companies, your grocery stores, your utility companies are all going to tell you that they needed extra funds to fix their computers, otherwise the lights will go out on January 1st, and they're going to pass that along to you and you're going to pay it, because when they create panic and someone says, I have the answer, no matter what that answer is, you're going to follow that person because you believe that's the way out. Fear creates control. And that is how society is run. The more fear they create in you, the more easily they can control you. And so, yes, I do believe there are some embedded chips out there designed specifically to fail in some industries. And I believe it's those industries that are designed to fail so that they can be changed into something else. But the major institutions, the banks, the stock market, the IRS, et cetera, already have the capacity to get way past the year 2000. You already have the proof in your telephone bills and in your credit cards and your registrations. All you have to do is look. And one thing I'll tell you, just to pull out your dollar bill right now, and instead of e pluribus unum, you have novus ordem seclorum, which means New World Order. And that's on your dollar bill right now. Look, take a look right now in your wallet. So it's already here. It's not something you have to anticipate. It exists now. You just have to be aware of it and learn how you're going to deal with it.
Okay, we got a question back there. It looks to me like, is that Jeff Harsh? Then you can tell him your name and why.
Got a microphone here?
Speak
Okay.
up. We can
All
hear
right,
you.
good. We got to turn on.
Your question.
Yes, I have a question to Stewart. Could I role play with you a second here? Take you back to 1942. The place is Dachau, and I am a SS officer, and you are a Jew, and I brought you into my office, and I'm saying, why shouldn't I take you out and put you in the gas ovens? What is your reason?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question. Obviously, there's right and there's wrong, and murdering someone because of their genetic composition is an incorrect way of dealing with society. Now, I'm not sure I understand why you brought the question up, but I I don't know, does anyone have any
Well,
comment on that?
hopefully we learned that lesson with
All right.
the Second World War.
All right, now we'll go back to it, and I just heard your
Oh,
explanation.
okay, all right.
And
am I correct in assuming that you asked the question in response to three of us saying
Mic should work.
that it's
that we
it's
create our own reality and you're wanting to see how we
right,
explain
the
it?
100th monkey principle that he's, yes.
Well, look, I'll tell you, it's a good question. I mean, when you go through life, you have many choices of what belief system you want to believe in, whether it's a Christian belief system, an Islamic belief system, a Buddhist, or some New Age channeling one, okay? So you have freedom of choice to what to believe. Through my own experiences personally, I can't speak for the others, I've had a lot of weird and wonderful experiences, and I have chosen in the end to follow the idea that I believe that I create my own reality, because to me it's the only consistent belief system that allows for everyone on the planet to have a real belief system existing separately, independently, and yet coexisting with everyone else on the planet. In terms of, how do you explain away, if you believe in creating your own reality, how do you explain a girl who gets raped by some horrible person down the road, or the Holocaust scenario, as you said? There is no pat answer for it. I don't condone what happened, and I certainly don't publicly, I mean, this is an exception, I certainly don't publicly go out and say that I believe we create our own reality, because of questions like this are very hard to address. All I can say is my personal belief system says that we have many lifetimes, we have many dimensional selves, we have many reasons for coming here and interacting with other people the way that we do, and they're personal reasons. They're reasons that all I can say based on my own experiences, I mean, the Hindus call it karma, maybe it's a word to use, but I believe my belief system for me personally involves me taking more responsibility for my actions and my thoughts and my interactions with fellow people. To believe something else where the responsibility is handled by God or a channeler or an ET or something like that is not my choice. So the way I would probably justify your question in my mind is everyone has free will. They choose to be alive, they choose to interact with people the way that they do for their own personal reasons. And it is interesting when you look at the few dramas that are close to you, which are horrific. You certainly, when you dive into it, there is a lot more going on than just this lifetime. There's just no doubt about it, in my opinion. But it's a personal choice.
I'd like to ask R.E. for his
But one thing, too,
comments at this
those
time.
decisions are made on the subconscious level, not the conscious level.
Okay, R.E., please, with your comments up to now here, or whatever.
Well, if they're made on the subconscious level, you're talking about the theta and alpha rhythms down in the below 8 hertz or so, 6 to 3 hertz, and that's where basically we interface with what we call the supernatural. But there's a Lebanese, to answer your question, there's a Lebanese proverb that goes like this: truth kills those who hide from it. And there's a, as I see it, it's not, the truth is not an either-or situation. It's usually a dialectic of tension where both are true, and finding the balance between, the fact that, yeah, we do reap what we sow. What goes around comes around. What we give off and broadcast at 10 microns in the infrared range and the light spectrum, where we live but don't see, in Phil Callahan's work, does come back, because in what we resist, we attract. What we need, we combat. There's truth there, but it's also true that we have that's an individual reality. There's also true we have this comprehensive reality where many and one both coexist, and there is a sense where we are swept away and caught up in the tides of history in terms of change that does occur. And so my perspective, and if this was really used at a transactional psychological conference in Copenhagen a couple of years ago, my work in this area has to do with the old perspective on the glass being half empty or being half filled. The classic answer is, well, if it's half empty, you basically have a negative perspective. If it's half filled, you have a positive one. My perspective is neither is really true. Is that the reality is there's always change going on. So it's never a stagnant, sterile state, and you need to discern. If it is a sterile state, then the very fact of evaporation means it's going to be emptied. But the question is, if it is being emptied, recognizing that truth and reality, then that objective reality, how do you respond to it subjectively? If you're thirsty, that's a negative thing. If you want to put it in the dishwasher, it's a positive one. On the other hand, if it's being filled and you want to put it in the dishwasher, that's a negative thing. If you're thirsty, that's a positive one. You see where I'm coming from there? So there's a point of discernment of recognizing who you are individually as part of the many that has free will, has the ability to covenant and contract, can be responsible spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, hopefully in an integrated way. And also, you've got the collective that you have to deal with. And by the way, on a ranch house down in New Mexico, if you love something, set it free. And the back end of it on those ranch house was, if it doesn't return to you, hunt it down and kill it. That's the American way.
Yeah, really.
The American West. But I want to respond to a few other things here. With regard to, as I have seen it, for the last dozen years, the media here, the news media has become like Pravda. I mean, it really has, and it's really scary to see that the only country that's really holding up the global economy has a news media that is privatized. And basically, I'll go to the Canadian channels, I'll go to the International Herald Tribune, I'll go to the London Times, anywhere else in the world to get real news, because it is so sanitized in this country. And that tells you that the degree of control is a direct function of the degree which we've abdicated our individual responsibilities, spiritually, emotionally, physically, economically, etc. With regard to the euro, they set it up because they saw what's coming for the dollar. We've got $5.7 trillion of debt on the federal level. All it's going to take is for the dollar to nosedive and the capital gains to go down in stocks, and we're going to see the federal deficit balloon again. We've got $1.3 trillion in consumer debt. Business debt is up to the hilt. Productivity and the real gains and earnings are not there. We have a negative trade balance that could, and a balance of payments deficits that could hit $300 billion this year. Europe, despite and we have negative savings in this country, because stocks are now seen as savings for the first time in history, which is a financial anomaly. Where Europe has a positive trade balance, does have savings, as do the Japanese. And already in the first month, the bonds were issued in euros. They were greater in dollar amounts than they were in U.S. dollars, even though U.S. dollars accounted for 47% versus euros 43%. So I think when we do see a shift in this country moving toward recession or downturn in the stock market, either of those, and stagnation will create either of those, and probably both, you'll see a gravitation back toward the euro, and funds that have basically flooded into this country because of the problems in Europe and Asia will tend to be repatriated at home. And I think another reason the dollar and the stock market is held up short term now is because we're the only country that's more Y2K compliant. But as that diminishes, those funds will also tend to diminish. Flow of funds internationally are basically a function of what's going on with relative real interest rates and also what's going on with the trade balance, both of which are at the apex, as I see it now, for the U.S. economy and currency.
Okay, is that you still at the mic? Are you still holding the microphone, Jeff?
Just wanted to thank you, gentlemen, for answering such a serious question. On the light side, though, I wanted to make a comment. There is a...
Make it quick. We've got 7 minutes.
I will. There's a wet T-shirt contest going on outside if somebody wants to join it.
Go watch it. All right, let's get an intelligent question.
This is directed to Stuart. You mentioned several large industries going under very quickly. Do you see this happening to the big 3 car companies that have an internal combustion engine that's throwing off 40 billion metric tons of hydrocarbon garbage into the atmosphere, and maybe the modern cars as we know it, going the way of the vacuum tube very, very quickly? Could you look clairvoyantly and see if that's happening soon?
Well, I don't think you need to be clairvoyant to answer that question. I do believe that the pollution situation, as far as automobiles are concerned, is designed specifically to create pollution in the atmosphere in order to help encourage a change in the weather patterns. That's my personal opinion on that. And there's reasons behind it which are beyond the scope of this panel right now. However, I do believe that within 3 to 5 years, there will be a major change in the energy system, if not sooner, that will result in much cleaner and a more efficient fuel consumption and usage that will eventually clean up the environment. It's not going to happen overnight, but I do think they're already working on that. There are prototypes available, and it might take 15 to 20 years or even longer before the entire world is changed over to a new system that will be more clean and efficient for our atmosphere.
All right. Okay, next question.
Yeah, Right. On the question of not just Nostradamus, but prophecy in general, I'd like to get some feedback on what you think about prophecies scattered. I mean, we've had them since thousands of years ago, scattered over time. And I wonder if they aren't just checkpoints on spiritual maturity of the human race, because if we pay attention to particular prophecies, they generally don't tend to come true at the time they were supposed to, if there's enough attention directed towards them and intention. But the reason why I'm living in the mountains today is because, not because of Y2K, and it's not because of solar flares, it's not because of the southern ice cap breaking off, it's not because of earthquakes, it's because of all of the above.
Well, I live in the mountains too.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in the middle of nowhere on top of a mountain in the Ozarks, but I like it for the isolation. I get away from these big cities when I'm traveling.
Well, I mean, my point here is that,
Yeah.
that it's a little bit difficult over a 12 or 14-month period to bring intention to bear on a half a dozen different things that can blow you away.
Oh, yeah, that's what,
Right.
if you focused on that, you know, you wouldn't be able to function at all. You just have to go on with our normal lives.
Right.
But I think your question was that these were, what, general and could be, are they, what was the part there?
Well, I mean,
Because-
I think that, you know, the whole, we're getting a lot of prophecy and prediction about a lot of different things, and they all seem to be converging in a short period of time.
Yes, because that's what
and-
he said. This is going to be the most important time in history right now.
Well, precisely, and we got all these signposts, you know, gathering up in a very short period of time. It sounds like a pretty severe test of our
Yeah, if we
state
can
of
get past-
consciousness.
If we can get past this, he said we'll go into the 1,000 years of peace. So see, we are at a pivotal point right here. But I don't think, see, the prophecies is general, because in my work, they had dates, names, and places, and these have been consistently coming true. And we went into reprint, we kept adding material saying this came true on such and such a date. So I keep hoping these things aren't going to come true, but we still seem to be on this path with this scenario that he saw. So there again, though, he did see some that were general and could fit many time periods in history, because history does repeat itself. But this is a very important time right now.
All right, another question back there?
Yeah. What bothers me is so much has been said, this panel and other people in the group and other groups like this one say that if our future is what we create, what we think in the future and so forth. So then I thought to look back on the century. They weren't saying those things particularly. People were going about their business, buying, selling. As T.S. Eliot said in the room, people come and go, speaking of Michelangelo. Not thinking in terms of bad things to happen. And suddenly, to them, World War I, World War II, all those things did happen, and there was a mass sufferings. And I thought, well, did they create this reality? They had no clue that it was going to happen. We have been clued in by prophecies that maybe some things are going to happen. So I think I'm having a problem with the walking in balance between not being in the fear mode necessarily, but when we're concerned about these things and we want to prepare properly, we're sort of looked upon as being a fear thing. And I'm wondering, how do we handle this? How do you...
We got a historian here. I'd like to ask him to address some of that. R.E.
Well, I thought I addressed that pretty well, not disagreeing with what they said. I think that's the truth individually. There's this balance between the collective reality, the individual reality, and it's both coexisting. You know, and we exist within society, and yet we also have our individual destinies and paths. So both of these have to exist. But if you look at historians such as Toynbee, he talked about the times of troubles. Oswald Spengler, in his classic written in the second decade of the century, The Decline of the West, talked about us moving to a time of world cities, as we are now when society basically becomes frozen and you don't make change. And then Toynbee comes back with like the stimulus response. Stimulus response, you no longer respond to the challenges that have been stimulated. A French historian talked, a book in 1956 called The Coming Caesars, talked about the rise of power to the top in huge bureaucracies. Pykoff's book, the Ominous Parallels, that very accurately in 1977 tracked the way this country has moved over the last 2 decades, comparing it with the way Nazi Germany developed, for heaven's sakes. There's some very interesting historical parallels that are also coinciding with the work of Dr. Eybeam Browning, one of the late great climatologists in this country, who projected in terms of, and here's a man that memorized the whole Encyclopedia Britannica in World War II. The world's foremost climatologist died a few years ago. Because there are only two parts of the human equation, land and labor, people and things, when it comes to the economic equation. And so he talked about this point of time in history coinciding with what I've seen from a lot of the, I'll use the word esoteric literature, and climatic changes always leading to upheavals in this time in history. And we're seeing such things as runways that are up in Minnesota being altered by 10 degrees because we're seeing that kind of magnetic shift. And then you look at things as the climatic changes, La Nina, El Nino. And we do have a surplus of food right now, and we've been incredibly fortunate and blessed globally these last 3 years to have these incredible crops at times when now prices are lower than they were at the Great Depression, some in real terms, some in adjusted terms. And so I think food is going to be it's got a long way to go on the upside for those of you who are farmers or investors. We're seeing the mutation of frogs and also lives that are on the curve or at the margin in terms of energy matter, particularly the closer you get to the poles. And this is also, in terms of the curve, the greatest change we're seeing in the Earth's magnetic field since 2,000 years ago when Christ was on the Earth. And that's always the time when the magnetic field that holds matter together as we see ourselves as frozen light interfaces more readily with the supernatural. The natural, the supernatural, there's less boundary there. So all these things are integrated in a sense.
Well,
and what you need to do is get your own stuff correct. So I mean, so what you're getting back, what you're giving off, is what you want. You're not attracting what you fear.
That may be true with.
And also dealing with the collective reality that truth does kill those who hide from it, and make adequate preparations.
What I was more thinking on the man down here more than the outside global changes. I was just concerned that we in America may possibly be caught with our collective pants down with the other countries out there that are against us making war preparations but pretending they are poor and so forth, like Russia's doing.
Well, even if you discount the preparations militarily being made by China and Russia, which evidence indicates are substantial, the collective consciousness and the individual consciousness of the rest of the world, Asia, Europe, Latin America, the former Soviet Union, is far different in the way they see reality than the way we do right now.
That's right.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go 5 more minutes, and then, because we're over time, but we'll take 5 more, and then we'll go right straight into Dolores. While you're here, you don't have to get up and move. Okay with you, Dolores?
Oh, I need a little break.
Well, we got to...
Just
all right.
a little bit, few minutes.
Okay, one more question?
Yeah, hi, I'm an astrologer, and I kind of disagree with most people's interpretation of Nostradamus. I personally believe that he was writing about body parts, and it had nothing to do with predictions. When he talks about red and white in the book, he's talking about red and white corpuscles.
And I disagree.
Well, see, that's okay.
Yeah.
But see, you don't understand astrology, and everything in life is mathematics. And you don't need insurance companies you don't need insurance because everything is predictable. All you have to do is look at the planet Mars and follow that around the chart, and you can predict your destiny. In addition to other things, but I'm just telling you don't have to live in ignorance and stupidity. All you have to do is understand mathematics.
Well, see,
and
that's
my opinion of Nostradamus.
Well, see, Nostradamus was a doctor, and in his day, they did have to know astrology because it was essential in medicine.
Correct. And he wrote about the Arabian parts. When he did his thesis, he was writing about the 22 Arabian parts, which are the formulas for the amino acids.
Yes, he explained that to me also, but I'll be going into my lecture to talk about that we communicated directly with him, so we know these prophecies.
Well, you know what? Then you don't understand quantum physics because those entities can't exist. If you understand chemistry, you won't talk that way.
Well, I'll explain it in my lecture because it's something never been done.
Do you thank the panel for their contributions here this afternoon? We have to... As the Democrats said defending Clinton, we have to move on.
Okay.
All right. Forget the facts. Let's move on. Thank you very much.
He made all the moves anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. A very short break, and then we're going to change tapes and move right into what we've just been talking about. Now we'll put the table down.
Well, we can leave it here. We're going to put the